So the other day, and quite possibly the numerous times that I've ever mentioned Social Security and gave you my opinion, which was really a question of, which is, how in the world can a person put in all their life in Social Security? And again, I said let's say you work from 20 years old till 65, you add up all those years. How can a person not get back what they put in it? And it didn't make any sense to me at all. I tried to find the data online. I couldn't really seem to find it. Found some other interesting things to just talk about while I was talking about Social Security. And somebody sent me a little PDF that some other person made an article about. And I started reading through it. I was like, oh, I didn't know. And he said, his claim was that in the article, the claim was that a person will blow through the amount of Social Security they saved up in as little as 2 months. No, maybe it was 2 years. I think it was 2 years. And I'm thinking, oh, that's absurd. That's not even possible. But it got me looking at some of the words and terms they were using, and I ultimately found another site, and it may have came from another person. When I was looking at his, I saw another email come in, and that may have been how I got this. But this, I was like, oh, okay, this finally explains it. This actually explains it, and it makes sense. And truth be told, when I asked, how can someone put in for 45, 50 years, however long they decide to work for, and not get all of that back at the end of their life, and should be okay considering the amount of money we get, for Social Security. And I hate to say this, but my thoughts were wrong. When I said a person puts in 40 whatever years plus, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense, not even kind of. How can you possibly run out of the money, or not have enough money? People keep sucking off of it for too long, whatever. And I finally got the data I needed to make me an informed Social Security-ist, if you will, which is why I'm doing this video, so that if you ever have the conversation with anybody else, and it does come up from time to time with different people, you will now have some solid evidence as to why this thing called Social Security was a failure from the beginning. And yes, in fact, the money will be gone by the time you need it all, simply because your wages when you were 20 years old and your wages when you're 50, 55 years old are massively different due to this little funny thing that the Federal Reserve says doesn't really exist too much, called inflation. When you account for that, Houston, we got some problems. This was from PolitiFact.com, winner of the Pulitzer Prize. Medicare and Social Security, what you paid compared with what you get. Perfect. I need to know this. 2013, February 1st, 2013. So this is fairly recently, 3 years ago. Do people get more back than they actually put in? Earlier this week, we published a story in several charts, earlier this week, 3 years ago, showing that average government spending on each elderly person is $26,355 compared to $11,822 for each child. Almost immediately, readers wrote to condemn us for overlooking what they considered a key issue. Quote, your statements as to expenditures on the elderly is, I think they meant to put suspicious at best, and at the least, completely misleading, said one representative letter. As you point out, most of the government spending on the elderly are Social Security and Medicare payments. These are not payments, but repayments of money that we have been forced to hand over to the government to fund a Ponzi scheme during our working lives. It is not expenditures on the elderly. It is a partial refund of money we have been forced to hand over. We thought this reader and others raised an interesting question. Are Social Security and Medicare payments actually a partial refund of what the beneficiary has already paid in, so we took a closer look. And by partial refund means they didn't get it all back, we're just getting pieces of it back. The Urban Institute, a nonpartisan research institute in Washington, produces statistics on this topic annually. Institute researchers figured out what people turning 65 in various years have already, quote, paid in to the system and what can expect to take out after they reach age 65. See our charts below. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, because marital status and family income can significantly affect both the amount paid in and the amount paid out, the Institute offers its calculations for various types of family units. To make the final amounts comparable to what might have been done with the tax money had it been invested privately, the Institute adjusted all dollar figures at 2% points above the rate of inflation. The authors note that different assumptions for long-term returns on investment would change the results. Of course it would. According to the Institute's data, a two-earner couple, both husband and wife working, receiving an average wage of $44,600 per spouse in 2012 dollars and turning 65 in the year 2010 would have paid a total of $722,000 into Social Security and Medicare, and can be expected to take out $966,000 in benefits. So this couple will be paid about 1/3 more in benefits than they pay in taxes. Now, I would argue one little thing: you are adding Social Security and Medicare, and the amount of Medicare fraud is out of this world, correct? Not necessarily the old person committing the fraud. No. The agencies around this country, doctor's office, pharmaceutical companies, all pharmacies, that's where the fraud lies. That's where the damn Medicaid money is being raped and pillaged. But still, we need to continue this article. In other words, what is just Social Security, take out Medicaid, then where are we at? That's what I'd like to know. If a similar couple had retired in 1980, they would have gotten back almost 3 times what they put in. And if they had retired in 1960, they would have gotten back more than 8 times what they paid in. The bigger discrepancies common decades ago can be traced in part to the fact that some of these individuals' working lives came before Social Security taxes were collected, beginning in 1937. Some types of families did much better than average. A couple with only one spouse working and receiving the same average wage would have paid in $361,000 if they had turned 65 in 2010, but can expect to get back $854,000, more than double what they paid in. In 1980, the same 65-year-old couple would have received 5 times more than what they paid in, while in 1960, such a couple would have ended up with 14 times with what they put in. Such findings suggest that even allowing for inflation and investment gains, many seniors will receive much more in benefits than what they paid in. So there's our other answer about the inflation. But my point's still valid. How much money were you making 40 years ago, your yearly salary, and what is it today? Or what's it been over the last 5 years, 10 years, etc.? It's probably way more than what it was. So very little was taken out in the beginning. And as the years go by, it costs way more to live. Therefore, all the amount you put in early on is pretty much wasted. In other words, you should have been able to take that money, the government should have taken it and invested it in one of the safest things ever, low interest rate, but safe as hell. And then by the time you retire, boom, you got some money sitting there waiting on you. But that's not how it works. The government takes it, uses it immediately. Ain't saving nothing, ain't investing nothing, no. So, Jagadish Gokal of the Libertarian Cato Institute says it's possible to quantify exactly how much has been spent on beneficiaries beyond what they pay in, using an obscure line in the massive 2012 report of the Social Security trustees. In wonk speak, the figure he's referring to is the closed group unfunded obligation estimate for the Social Security program. In layman's terms, it's the inflation-adjusted dollar value of benefits paid beyond the participants' tax payments for all past and current beneficiaries by the time of their death. According to this calculation, past and current generations will pay $71.3 trillion in payroll taxes, but will receive $93.4 trillion in benefits. Adjusting for past and future transfers from the federal treasury, the difference between paid in and paid out would be $21.6 trillion. The $21.6 trillion number will change as soon as we change policies whereby today's generations pay more taxes or surrender some benefits. And here's where I'm going to have to go with that, and you may not like this one. But then again, you might. Surrender some benefits? Check. Pay more taxes? X. No. Again, the whole Medicaid, Medicare thing, and you say, well, but the poor older people who can't afford anything, they get that for free. And I get it. But is everyone willing to pay a lot more? It ain't going to be a little. It's going to be a lot more taxes in order to deal with this problem. And keeping in mind, you're paying a huge amount to fraud every year. Medicaid and Medicare fraud is absolutely out of control. And the numbers that we hear about are only the numbers that they think that they can take a look at and grasp, like, yeah, that's fraud. And for every one of those, how many other ones are actually fraud that they didn't catch? It's out of control. Well, hey, I'm a doctor or a pharmacist, and I got this $120,000 student loan debt. I can't pay that off. I'm going to have to do things a little bit on the side, on the down low, if you know what I mean. Medicaid fraud, Medicare fraud. What? You got to help them, because I still have to afford my McMansion and my Mercedes and BMW, brand new, 7 Series, 8 Series, whatever. I deserve that because I am a doctor and I live in America, and as American doctors, that's what we have. So this stupid student loan debt, I need to figure out how to deal with that. How about some fraud? How about a double or triple serving of fraud? We hear these stories all the time. The local news channels, it's usually not a big, mainstream media. It's just local news channels. Oh, we've uncovered Medicare fraud for the state of Florida tonight at 9. Oh, it's hard to believe. It sounds like, I thought you guys were repeating the same episode. Every time I turn on the channel, I hear something like that every month or two. I'm thinking you're regurgitating the same old story. Oh, no, it's a new one. Oh, gotcha. So the charts, pretty much in all instances, are not even close. They pretty much spell a lot more money's coming out than going in. Pretty simple. Annual Social Security benefits. Here are the annual Social Security benefits. $2,012 for some people who retire at 65 in 2010 based on different working life scenarios. Single male, average wage, $17,900. Single female, average wage $17,900. One income couple, average wage $26,900. Well, first of all, where was this at? At what point? Or was this just this can't be the average? Here are the annual Social Security benefits in 2012 dollars for some people who retired. Yeah. Either way, it's not looking good. It is not looking good. And the worst part about this, you're going to hear these politicians and whoever the president is, and we got to deal with this. I'm sorry, we know we hate raising taxes, but we have to. You're going to hear this nonsense. And the whole time you're going to hear this nonsense, I want you to think of one thing. If you haven't seen the documentary, you need to go see it. Bill Still, The Secret of Oz. It is fantastic. Backed up by history, data. You don't have to question. You certainly can question anything in that you want and go look it up, but you're not going to have to. And it makes the case, I've mentioned this before, he says even gold and silver backing, any of that, none of it's better than this suggestion. And the suggestion came from previous times, and whoever came up with that suggestion seemed to have died by an assassin, coincidentally. One of the main ones, Abraham Lincoln. The North was running out of gold to pay their troops and silver. The South was running out, and troops don't work for free, no matter how good to the cause. And he had a great idea. We're going to create this paper dollar green called the greenback. It'll be just as good as precious metals. They won the war, paid all the troops. They used the money. It worked great. He decided, this works so great, I think I want to keep it going forward as the president of this country, the United States, Abraham Lincoln, because the dollars were never, ever, ever, ever borrowed into existence like ours currently is. You see, when a dollar is printed, the Treasury, so the Federal Reserve prints the dollar, the Treasury prints the same exact amount in bonds. So if the Federal Reserve needs to print $10 billion to borrow, we need to borrow it, our own money for some reason, we borrow that into existence, but before that transaction happens, $10 billion in Treasury notes or bonds are printed and sold on the quote-unquote market. Whoever buys those bonds gets interest payments for the lifespan of the bonds and then gets paid back in full ultimately. So you're paying interest all this time and then a full payback when the bonds mature or expire, if you will. So somebody who's got a lot of money can buy a lot of bonds and you just pay them interest the rest of their lives. And then when it's done, whether it's a 10-year or 30 or whatever, then you get the full amount back. So they've made all this interest for 10 years or 30 years, if it's a 30-year bond. And at the end of the 30 year, here you go, it's all paid back in full. So you got all that interest. One would stand back and say, why are we even doing that? What's this whole borrow bonds, sell the bonds, pay interest? Why aren't we just printing our own money with no interest attached to it? And we don't borrow it. We just print it and use it, like Abraham Lincoln did. But see, his idea went right out the window because he had his head blown off by this crazy guy. You don't think he was a hired hitman by the club, do you? No, not at all. So out he went, and out the whole greenback idea went right after that. And we went back to a central bank printing money, borrowing it into existence. This whole shortfall, Social Security, all this stuff, this is what I said, I want you to think about this, when this happens and you hear about the taxes, and I hate to do that, and we got to tackle this problem. You think about this. All we have to do is print money into existence with no interest, no borrowing. We just use it. I've mentioned this little theory before, and it would be as simple as this. Because we seem to see these boom and bust periods, don't we? Businesses and the economy is great. Oh, bust period. It's not so good. Recession, maybe a depression. Oh, businesses closed down. I had 2 houses. I had to sell one. A vacation. Right? So let's assume that that's just a cycle, because it certainly appears to be. And it's going to keep going. It's just going to keep on going. And when that cycle hits, the reason people suffer so bad is because the economy takes a dump. Oh, not many customers coming in anymore. I got to let go of some of my employees. So does the guy next door. So does the guy in the next city. So does the guy in the next state. And so on and so on. And then you have people on unemployment. Right? It just taxes the hell out of the system. You have all these problems. So imagine that happens. Oh, it's a bust period. Yep, we're definitely in a bust period. All federal agencies and local government agencies, because again, they can all be paid the same way. In other words, the government prints its money, doesn't have to collect any tax anymore. Property tax, you don't own your house. You think you own your house, but you don't. Once you realize if you don't pay taxes, you get kicked out. Imagine living in New York, $20,000, $30,000 a year taxes on their houses. Oh, I lost my job. I can't pay it. Oh, your house is paid off in full. Yeah. Oh, listen, we're gonna have to sell it. We're gonna have to take it from you. Put a tax lien on it. But I thought private property. I thought no. Oh, I don't. Okay. All taxes would go away. There would be, listen to me, zero taxes. Oh, driver's license fee. No fees. No fees, no taxes. Why? Because the government's printing its own money, using it to pay all of its bills, which also includes its employees that work for the government, which also means, yeah, man, go to the driver's license office. I hate going on Mondays and Fridays. It's always so busy. I'm there for 2-3 hours. Oh, wait a minute. We're in a recession? They just hired a whole bunch more people at the state level, the federal level, and the local government level, the county level, the city level. All government agencies, memorandum from the President of the United States and Treasury Secretary, just, for a little bonus. We both signed off on this. Start hiring. We just need all agencies to hire 1%, 2% of your current amount of employees. 2% more, 1%. Oh, no problem. Recession canceled. Everybody has a job again. They're still spending because they have a job. Therefore, the whole boom and bust cycle stops, and it's just a nice period of booming. That's all it would take. Now, here's the part that may make you upset. But I've thought long and hard about this before, and I've even mentioned this before. Because that sounds like a great system, does it not? No more boom and bust. You unemployment. Nope, there's no such thing as unemployment anymore. You will always be able to go to the government and get a job somewhere doing something. Because they just pay for it. They're adding employees. No big deal. Here's the problem. You see the fraud and corruption across this planet. And let's just focus on our country. Okay, let's forget the rest of the planet and just say in America. Voting machines rigged, Hillary Clinton exit polls, fraud, corruption, Benghazi attacks, the leaked emails. I mean, everything you can think of. Gun running back with Eric Holder. Remember that? Fast and Furious. I mean, back in the 80s, the Iran-Contra scandal. All of it. And you see who's in charge and who stays in charge the whole time. The club. I think to myself, if I had the opportunity to just flick a damn magic wand, I don't have a magic wand, but I do have a magic 8-ball. If I flick this magic 8-ball, boom, we're now in that system. The club and their agencies, their companies they work with, the club's own private agencies, companies. You think they're getting paid massively now for, we're going to cost half $1 billion building a healthcare website. No problem. People said I could have got that done for less than $1 million, and it would have been way better than what we have. Nah, I'd rather give it to my college friend to do for us. If you think that spending's bad now, it would make you sick in a system where they can just print money for free, not borrowing it, nothing holding them back. And these same people would still be in power. So I feel like, you know what? Forget that whole system. Let's let them do what they always do. Because it always ends with a civil war in which they ultimately will lose. They may win at first, whatever. History shows they always lose. And these people need to be taken out of the positions of power that they're in. Once that happens, which might be damn near impossible, then let's talk about a system like this. Unfortunately, I don't think this system will ever show its face either, which is why they're preparing you for a precious metals-backed new currency in which they will still be borrowing money into existence. So since we can't change that, you need to be aware of it and go get you some precious metals while you can. Take care.